Spring 1943, northern Brazil, deep in the Amazon. 10 of us from the Army Forest Service went in to map routes for rubber and build an airstrip. It sounded simple. Then the radio died. We found claw marks 10 feet high, prints too wide for any man, and a clearing full of bones stacked like trophies. Something was watching us from the trees. Something big, smart, and wrong. It wasn't a legend. It was survival, and not all of us made it out. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel, and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was 24 when the jungle took my friends. I'm older now. Bones ache when storms roll in. That stink of rot still crawls up my nose when I try to sleep. I can hear the river if I sit quiet. That black water from the north of Brazil. Thick as oil. Sound carries weird there. It sneaks up behind you. We came in by boat in the spring of 1943. Brazil had thrown in with us. Rubber mattered. Tires for trucks. Seals and hoses for planes. Somebody in a clean shirt and belaying decided a strip could go out here, and the Army Forest Service, yeah, that was a thing, was told to see if it could. 10 of us, counting me. The captain was Miller. Good jaw. Eyes like chipped glass. He'd fought in the last war as a teenage grunt, and stayed in because some men don't know how to stop. Sergeant Davis rode the radio. He slept with that set like it was a sweetheart. Corporal Lee was the naturalist we'd borrowed. College boy. Knew plants, soils, bugs, tracks. Also knew when to shut up and when to talk. Private Allen was the kid. Couldn't have a beard if he begged for one. We had Parker, who could swing an axe like it owed him money. Torres and Rizzo from New Jersey. Wild mouths, big backs. Sanders, who never smiled. Bennett, who talked about home like he could make it appear if he said Pennsylvania enough. And me. They called me Grady. I knew how to do what I was told and how to keep a compass line in trees that all looked the same. The river was a strip of black glass running through walls of green. Steam rose off it. Dragonflies, big as your hand, skimmed the surface. A line of vultures followed us all morning, gliding lazy, like they knew we'd feed them sooner or later. Our local guide sat up front, wrapped in faded shirts. They didn't say much. When they did, it was to the boatman, soft, like they were embarrassed for us. We unloaded crates onto a strip of muddy bank. Tents, canvas tarps, radios, dry rations that came out of cans and tasted like metal, fuel tins. The air hit us like a wet blanket. My shirt stuck to me and never got unstuck. The world hummed. Not one hum, 100. Mosquitoes swarmed. We lit coils. Didn't do much. We set camp on ground just high enough to keep us out of the flood if the river rose. Captain had us in a square, tents to the inside. Cooking fire in the middle under a fly. Latrine trench downhill, away from the water. You don't want your own mess coming back to meet you. We strung ropes for drying lines we knew would never dry anything. We staked the boats. We put up a little map board with grease pencil marks. Felt right. Like order could bite back at chaos if you nailed it down tight enough. The work started on day 1. Lee got us cutting shallow pits. He pinched soil between his fingers and talked about loam and clay and compaction. He told me which spots might hold a strip if you cut trees and filled low ground. I paced out distances and wrote numbers that bled when the rain hit them. Captain walked with that tight gait officers get when they pretend they're not tired. Davis tuned the radio, trying to catch Beleman, cussing under his breath when the static drowned him. He had a real antenna strung up between 2 trees. Looked like a spider web if a spider got drunk. The guides refused to go deeper. They'd come this far. They'd get us back downriver when we were done. But every time the captain talked about pushing inland, they shook their heads. The older one had a scar running up his forearm. He kept tapping his chest and saying something over and over. The boatman said it in Portuguese first, then in broken English, "Watcher." In there, we no go. He pointed at the tree line like he was pointing at a man with a rifle. It watches. It follows. No good. Torres laughed loud. Rizzo said something about boogeymen. Parker flexed like he was about to arm wrestle a monkey. The captain kept his face to stone and said, "We'll be fine. We stick to plan." Normal life in the camp was its own kind of punishment. The heat didn't stop at night. The bugs didn't either. The rain came and went without meaning, sometimes a spit. sometimes a sheet that made the world disappear. The food was beans and hard bread and meat from a tin that said beef, but chewed like an eraser. We boiled river water until the pot blackened. We joked until bedtime because laughing is a kind of medicine. Sanders told the same dumb joke about a chaplain and a donkey like he was paid by the word. Alan wrote a letter every evening. His paper went limp in his hands. The jungle felt alive. I don't mean that like poetry. I mean it like a dog that watches you from under the porch. Every time I went out to pee, I felt eyes on my back. A shift of leaves that wasn't the wind. The hush you get in church when a door opens. I told myself it was monkeys. Blee said the same. Spider monkeys. Howlers, sloths. They look at you. You look at them. That's all. We cut a trail inland the second day. We used machetes the way you use breath. Swing, step. Vine sap stuck like glue. Spines went through sleeves. We flagged with strips of cloth. We marked trees with a single blazed cut. Lee showed us a big leaf plant and said we could wipe with it if we ran out of paper. I tried it once. Won't make that mistake again. The guides watched us go. They didn't wave. Their eyes went to the trees, then down to the ground like they were looking at graves. I told myself they were superstitious. I told myself a lot of things that week. Didn't help. Nights got loud. Then they got wrong. The first few, the tree frogs were a chorus. Little chirps. Grunts from something big out in the black. Lee could pick them out like he had a list. That's a howler male. That's a capybara. That's a frog whose Latin name I don't remember because I'm tired. He tried to be funny. It helped. But 3 nights in, a sound rolled in thick, too deep for a jaguar, too long for a man. It wasn't a roar like a lion, more like somebody dragging a log across a board. Low, wet, made your spine sit up. We looked at each other by the fire and didn't say anything. Some things you don't give words to because then they're real. Morning, Lee found claw marks. 10 feet up a straight trunk. Not a vine scrape, not a man with a knife. 5 lines, deep and curved like a hook. He pressed his fingers into them and looked like he wanted to puke and read a paper at the same time. Big, he said. Bigger than anything here should be. He traced with a pencil and sketched it in his little notebook. He scribbled like he was chasing the thought. Could be bear, Rizzo said, almost hopeful. No bears, Lee said. Not here. Mosquitoes came even in rain. They didn't take a holiday. Nets helped if you tucked them perfect, and even then, you woke up with bites in places you don't tell a doctor about. Morale slid. You could hear it. Less joking, more breathing. We took turns slapping our own necks. One morning, Alan woke me before first light. He had that high, tight look. Grady, he whispered. Look. He had his bedroll unrolled to show the ground. The mud carried prints. Footprints. Human-shaped, but wider. Toes splayed like paddles. The heel sunk deeper than a man's would. The weight felt wrong, even to my eye. They came to the edge of his bedroll. Stopped. Turned. Walked away. I put my hand against one. It swallowed my palm. Joker, Parker said later, like he needed it to be a joke to breathe. But nobody confessed. Nobody grinned. Lee measured stride with his little tape. He didn't say the numbers out loud. The radio went funny. Davis swore he had belly M one night. Then static hit like a swarm. No voice, just hiss and a low warble that felt like it was coming from the trees themselves. He adjusted the tuning with the little knob he loved. He climbed the ladder we had lashed together and checked the wire. He came down shaking his head. Atmospherics, he said. Storms all around, bouncing the signal. It'll clear. It didn't. We started to see it. I know how that sounds, but we did. It wasn't a monster in the moonlight. It was a shift at the edge of vision. A tall dark somewhere. The ground was short and copses were low, tall like a man on stilts wrapped in moss. Then gone. Palm shadow, I told myself. Cloud passing. I kept saying it like a prayer. It didn't stick. That feeling of dread, big word but right, arrived like malaria. Slow, then sudden. The jungle pressed in like it wanted us out. Normal noises went loud. Radio quiet went deep. The air got heavier when the sun dropped. It smelled like wet fur sometimes, not always. Just when the night stood up and looked at you. The day Parker vanished, we were on a routine morning push. We split into 2 sticks, 4 and 6. I was with the 4. Captain took the 6 with Parker and Lee. We kept voice contact. Short calls, left clear, water ahead, that kind of thing. The canopy was a lid. Light came down in broken coins. Hum of bugs. A far grunt from something that saw us and didn't care. Then we heard a scream. Not the panic kind. Not the I cut myself kind. The short shout that's getting strangled. We froze. The captain's voice came over, tight. Parker status. Nothing. We moved fast toward their line. Branches snapped like bones. The smell hit first. Mud and snake and something that lives in water. The ground sloped into a low swamp. Black water. Mats of floating plant like slick skin. We found Parker half submerged near a root tangle. His face was above the water. Eyes open and wrong. His chest and hips were under. The mud sucked. We pulled him up and his body moved like a sack with broken sticks inside. Lee cursed. He never cursed. He put his hand to Parker's ribs and shut his eyes. Compression, he said. Look, he pressed 2 fingers to the purple stripes across Parker's torso. Wide bands. Not a bite. Not teeth. Something had wrapped him. Squeezed until bones gave way like chalk. Anaconda, Torres whispered. Big bastard. Lee shook his head. Bigger, he said. Look at that spacing. Look at the depth. This is not like any I've seen. The locals have a story. He stopped himself. We all stared. He cleared his throat. Doesn't matter. The fact is, the snake was huge. Captain had his jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. We're not here to hunt snakes, he said. We keep away from water. We stay tight. We get him back, and we move on. We wrapped Parker in his poncho and carried him in like a rolled rug. We dug a grave on a little rise. We didn't have a chaplain. Captain said a short thing about duty. I said whatever I had that sounded like a prayer. The rain started as we piled the last dirt. That night, I heard the river move like something big sighed. A long, low splash far down. You tell yourself it's a Cayman. You tell yourself anything beats what your head wants to make. Doesn't fix it. I lay there with sweat running behind my ears and counted my breathing to stay calm. It didn't work. We marked Parker's grave with a cross made from 2 sticks and wire. In the morning, it had sunk an inch. Ground eats everything here, even memory. The rain went from bad to worse. Buckets didn't catch it. Canvas sagged and dumped it. The radio sputtered and died. Davis took it apart and laid its guts out on a dry cloth like a doctor with a patient. He cleaned every contact and cursed softly like it was a prayer. He put it back together. It hummed. Then it spit and quit. He placed his hand on it like he was saying goodbye to a friend. Our food got ugly. Wet rations go sour fast. We ate what we could, browned what we couldn't, and burned what had gone to hell so the stink wouldn't call in everything with a nose. The captain wrote neat lines in his notebook while the rain drummed. Men watched him like they wanted him to write a boat into existence. 3 days after Parker, we found Sanders dead outside the wire. Wire was a joke. We'd strung a few tins and a couple trip lines. Not much to slow a man with a mind or a beast with mass. Sanders lay on his side like he'd lain down to nap and never woke. His skull was broken, not a neat hole like a bullet. Caved. One side crushed in like someone hit him with a hammer big as a shovel. His rifle was under him, safety on. Finger still near the trigger. No powder smell. No struggle marks in the mud except his boots turning once, like he'd spun at a sound and then the world went black. Lee got quiet. He knelt by Sanders and touched the dirt around his head with a stick, gentle. Not cat, he said. Not jaguar. They bite. They rake. They tear the throat. This is a blow. He swallowed. He looked at the trees and then up. A primate could do it. A very large one. He didn't say the rumor, but I'd heard him whisper it to Davis the night before. Mono Grande. The big monkey men the rubber men talked about when they got deep in their cups. I didn't believe in monkey men. I believed in bad luck and bad judgment. But the print in the mud near Sanders' boot was like the one near Alan's bedroll. Toes wide, heel deep. It overlapped his own boot print like an adult steps on a kid's. We argued. Some said man, some said animal. Torres said both. We pissed off something that thinks, he said. I know that look. I've seen it in men. The captain's mouth went thin. "We are not getting into a ghost chase," he said. "We complete the survey. We stay together. We do not go off alone. We do not chase noises." But the noises changed. At night, the jungle went dead quiet. That's worse than loud. Frogs shut up. Birds shut up. Even the rain seemed to hush like it didn't want to be noticed. When that happened, you could hear breathing that wasn't yours. Big, slow, wet breaths, like something that had climbed out of a grave and wasn't finished being mad about it. We set guards in pairs, back to back, rifles up, eyes burning. Once, near dawn, Rizzo hissed and pointed. We all looked where his fingers shook. Between two trunks, up off the ground, something watched. Eyes glowed dull like coals, not bright like a cat's. They were set wide, not close like a person. They didn't blink. They didn't sway. They just were. Then they were not. We all breathed out at the same time like we'd been holding one set of lungs. I cleaned my rifle slow and careful and checked the bolt every hour. It felt like a toy. We went deeper because the map said high ground if we went 2 days in. High ground means less flood, which means an airstrip could live long enough to matter. The path we cut was a scar through green. We moved quiet except for the vines that grabbed ankles. Lee took the lead sometimes, reading plants like some folks read faces. "Palm species here is different," he said. "Soil too. See how the water drains? This ridge could run long and straight, maybe." He stopped talking for a minute. The smell had changed. More rot. Not the normal sweet rot of leaves. Tang of meat. We came to a clearing like a mouth open to the sky. No tall trees. The ground was churned and littered with bones. Not neat like a pile from men. Stacked and scattered both. Human bones. Animal bones. Long bones gnawed and broken. Skulls. Some cracked. Some complete. You could see where sun had bleached them white and where rain had stained them brown. It wasn't old. Some had dry meat on them like jerky. We stood with our boots among ribs and didn't say a word. Lee squatted and touched a femur, his face blank. "Carcass cache," he said finally, voice low. "Some predators drag kills to a den. Some make a midden. This is organized." He pointed at a tree. Claw marks again, deep. He traced one with the tip of his knife. Curved, like a hook. Not cat, not bear. Something that digs. Davis turned in a slow circle. "We're in something's kitchen," he said. "We should leave." The captain nodded once. "Mark it," he told me, voice flat. "Then we get back to camp." We went back fast. That night we strung trip flares we'd carried for just in case. Tin cans with the little pyros attached. Line at me height around the inner tents. If something big went through, we'd get light enough to see it. Maybe. Rain came, steady. We huddled in the dark. The breathing came near midnight. Heavy. Closer than before. I could feel it in my chest. The tripwire twanged. A flare popped with a shriek and spat white fire across the clearing. For a second, the world went stark. Shadows like knives. And behind the tents, between two trunks, a shape moved. Big as a truck tilted on its side. Fur matted with mud and leaves. A head too blocky for a cat. One eye cloudy white like milk, the other shadowed by brow and tangled hair. The mouth wasn't like anything I knew. Wide, lips sagging, teeth like thick pegs. The stink hit rot and musk, and something chemical like sap. It moved sideways, not fast, and was gone as the flare died. Men opened up, rifles barked staccato. Tracers sliced useless air. Something screamed from the dark, not a cat scream, not a man. Deep, hurt, mad. A body thumped by the far tent. Alan shouted once, and then his voice cut off like a wire pulled from a wall. "Alan," I yelled and ran 3 steps before Captain grabbed my collar and yanked me down hard. A shadow slid over the far edge of camp, tall and hunched. The next flare lit and it was there again, crouched by Alan's bedroll, arm no, limb hooked by claws that made my stomach turn. It dragged him like he weighed nothing. His boot left a line through the mud that filled with rain as fast as it made. We shot. We threw 2 flares more and lit half the canopy with white smoke. It vanished because it knew how. It had been doing this longer than any of us had been alive. The captain's face had a look I hadn't seen on him. Not fear. Math. Adding losses, counting bullets. A map in his head of how we die if we stay. He said, "It's thinking, just like that. No drama. It knows the lines. It knows the lights. It knows us." After Alan, men, even the loud ones, went small. Fever hit two of us. Torres raved about a woman back home and mosquitoes landed on his lips between words. We kept the fire low because flame brings eyes. We chewed quinine and puked it back up. Feet rotted in boots. Skin stayed wet. The smell of us got bad. Captain said we'd pull to the river and ride out on rafts. Lee didn't like the water. "Snake," he said. "We know the water has a snake," Captain said. "We also know the land has a monster. Pick your poison." He didn't say monster, he said animal, but I heard what his mouth dimmed. We built rafts from lashed logs and vines. Sweat stunned cuts. I could feel eyes from the tree line like a hand between my shoulder blades. We pushed off 2 rafts, 5 to each, gear piled, nothing balanced right. The river looked slow. It wasn't. The current took us the way it wanted. The banks slipped past, black roots like fingers. We kept the rafts close and talked low to keep our heads. "See that bird?" Rizzo said, pointing at a heron like he could tame the day with names. It hit us from underneath, no warning besides a ripple like a boulder someplace else. The rear of the other raft reared up. Bennett went backward into the water with his mouth open and no sound came out. The raft bucked. A coil the size of my torso came up, slick and black-green, wrapped twice around Torres. It squeezed. I heard ribs crack like branches. We shot and bullets skipped and made little angry splashes. The water turned red, then black again. The coil loosened because it had what it wanted. It took both under. Bubbles came. Then just rain. We tried to grab the raft that still floated, but it spun and smacked a root and dumped Davis. The current shoved him toward a snarl of branches. He clawed and came up with his face carved. I got a hand to his collar and yanked, and we both sprawled onto our own raft. Captain fired into water like a madman until the clip went dry. He reloaded with hands that shook and then stopped and stared at nothing for a beat. Then he went calm again, like he'd burned it out of himself. We made the bank in a scramble of knees and curses and dragged the raft up far as we could. Lee yelled, "Up!" off the water, and we ran. Something big moved under the surface near where we'd been. A head broke clean for a second. A broad, flat face like a shovel, little eyes set too far apart, mouth shut tight, and then it slid away. "Yakumama," Lee said, breathless, not gloating, just naming the devil. Big Mother, bigger than stories. Back on ground, we were less men than pieces. We had fewer rifles. We had less food. We had more fear. We picked a line away from the river, any line that wasn't the one toward the clearing of bones. "We need high ground," Captain said. "We need a ridge with a wind that'll carry our stink away." The jungle laughed without a sound and sent us the other way. We followed an animal path that looked like a good idea until it wasn't. It dipped into a low grove and the ground turned to soup. We sank to mid-calf and lost a crate to the mud. The map case slipped from Lee's arm in a stumble and went under before he could even bend. He clawed at brown water and came up with leaves and nothing else. We stood and watched words go away. That night, the storm woke up pissed. Wind came through the trunks like a freight line. Lightning cut the sky in squares. Trees cracked in the distance and then closer. The big breathing came when the thunder paused. It moved around us in a loose circle, not hurrying. Sometimes branches whispered high up like something big brushed past, close enough to shake rain onto our faces. Lee crouched and covered his head with his hands like a kid. "Grady," he hissed. "Listen." He guided my hand to the ground. I felt tiny vibrations in the mud, heavy steps. Not running, not tiptoeing, just moving. You don't sleep when you feel that. You just wait. Morning was a smear. We took roll like a schoolhouse. We were one short. Bennett. He'd slept under the fly next to me. His pack was there. His rifle lay across his bedroll. The bedroll itself, flattened, like something had pressed it with a hand. There were prints I didn't want to see. Toes, wide, heels deep. Rain had softened the edges, but not enough to hide them. They went off in a line, not wandering, direct. They knew where they wanted to go. Lee stood, shaking, but steady enough to speak. "It's not a myth," he said. It's an animal. It shouldn't be here, but it is. A ground sloth. A big one. A survivor from way back. Not a plant eater. Not anymore. Something else now, territorial. Big, slow but not slow enough. Claws like knives. It stands and reaches. It smells like rot because it eats rot and makes rot. He looked at the trees like he was in church, one eye gone. Infection probably. That's why it comes from one side. That's why it circles the way it does. He swallowed. It knows we're in its place. The men looked like kicked dogs. Captain didn't laugh at the word sloth. He didn't have laughter left. We move by day, he said. We rest in places where we can see. We keep a watch. We waste no bullets. We rig flares again if we can. We're getting out. We didn't get out. Not then. The storm went from bad to biblical. The sky stayed a bruise. Rain came sideways. Trees leaned. The ground, already a sponge, turned to slick clay. We found a small shoulder of the hill where roots laced the soil enough to hold it. We threw up 2 tarps and a third as a windbreak. We ate cold beans because fire smoke makes a beacon. I cleaned my rifle again, even though I knew the oil was going to run out of it like tears. Davis tuned a dead radio with the look of a man at a funeral. Even over the storm, we heard the thing when it chose to come. It didn't hurry. That was the worst part. It wasn't a charge. It was an arrival. Branches to the right scraped. The windbreak pressed in and then relaxed like a lung. The stink hit. Musk, rot, wet fur. Captain looked at me, and I saw a question I never thought I'd see on his face. I nodded like I had an answer, and I didn't. The first tarp ripped like paper. A claw came through like a scythe. It wasn't a swipe. It was a deliberate cut. A loop of canvas fell in. Rain slammed onto us. Lee shouted, "Left, left." It was to our right. He'd said left because his brain and his eyes were losing the map. The thing stepped in, not fully. It knew enough to keep the big body behind trunks. But I saw it then. The shoulder, the wet hair that had matted into plates, the long arm, the hand more like a hook with bones under fur that didn't belong in a modern world. The head came forward, and that one milky eye stared into the tarp space like it could taste the air through it. Its mouth opened, not wide, just enough to show those stub teeth and the dark, pink tongue flat like a slug. It made a sound like a big drum hit in another room. We fired. All of us. Light strobed the mud. The thing withdrew a half step. The first time I saw it, surprised, not scared, shocked that anything could bite back. Captain shouted, "Grenades." We had 3. I pulled one, and my hand shook, but it did what it needed, and the spoon popped, and I counted 1, 2, and threw for where its chest would be if it leaned again. Davis threw short. Lee didn't throw at all. He froze with the thing cupped in his fingers like a bird he didn't know how to release. The grenades went. The jungle turned to a white stamp of sound and fragments. Leaves shredded. A trunk split. The windbreak whipped into ribbons. A piece of shard hit my cheek and went through and left me with a hot line. The thing bellowed. No other word fits. Not a scream. Not a roar. A bellow like a bull crossed with a drum. It stepped in full for a second, and I saw it lit by lightning, massive chest. Stomach sunk a little like it had been hungry too long. Legs thick as pillars. The blind eye looked like a pearl. The good one burned dull. Blood ran from the shoulder and steamed when rain hit it. Its fur smoked where the blast had set it alight. The smell of singed hair and rot made me gag even while I fired. It came through anyway. A claw took Rizzo from belly to chest and opened him like a sack. He dropped without a sound. Lee was on his knees, looking up at it with that awe that had kept him alive and was about to kill him. It swiped and he was just not there anymore. I don't know how else to say it. He was a smear of motion, and then a lump that didn't move. Davis grabbed the radio like it was worth anything, and it wasn't, and then let it fall, finally, like he dropped an idol and was free. He put his rifle to his shoulder and shot methodical, counting without counting. The fire started small. The grenades had sparked a dry pocket under a root where the rain couldn't reach. It licked up into vines full of oil. Lightning hit a tree on the far edge and took the top off. Branches rained down, burning like torches. The thing didn't like fire. It jerked back, not fast but deliberate. It reached up and pulled a limb aside like you or I would push a curtain. It wasn't mindless. It wasn't even mad the way animals get mad. It assessed. It moved. I thought, we are not winning. We are surviving. Captain shouted my name. Grady Davis. Raft. He meant the half raft we dragged back from the river and propped against a tree as a table. He meant the only stupid plan left, ride the flood downhill and pray the snake was nursing its own herds. We grabbed what we could. Rifles, a sack with dry rations, a canteen that didn't leak, Lee's notebook because it was in my hand and it felt like a sin to leave it. We ran. The fire behind us rose and snapped and threw shadows wide like hands trying to grab. The thing moved unseen in that flicker, then appeared again between trunks like a mountain you'd lost track of. It didn't chase at a sprint. It followed with patience. We slid down a mud chute on our asses and got to a wash that ran like a creek that had been a path yesterday. The raft was a joke. 3 logs and vine. We shoved it in and it bobbed and tried to get away. We got on because what else do fools do? The current took us. Treetops whipped overhead. Rain flattened the surface. I heard the bellow again behind and it was softer now. Not because it hurt, because we were farther. The firelight turned the rain orange for a second and then went out when we turned a bend. We rode that water like dead men ride hearses. I held the raft with both hands and my rifle with my teeth, and Davis bled from his ear, but he smiled like a crazy person because we weren't dying that second. The river proper swallowed our little stream, and we were back on the black lane that brought us in. On the bank, trees leaned and watched. The big snake did not come. Maybe the bangs heard it. Maybe it had eaten enough. Maybe the jungle was a casino and we'd rolled a pass. We floated until the raft half sank and then sank proper. We swam the last stretch to a sandbar and crawled up like seals. We lay with our chests heaving and the rain on our backs and the world great and old and not for us all around. The bellow faded. Low, guttural, endless in my head even when the real sound was gone. I think about that often. You probably think I'm making it bigger with time. I'm not. If anything, my words are smaller than the truth, but small words are all I have. They found us days later. A Brazilian patrol coming up river in a boat with a motor that coughed. We must have looked like ghosts, eyes sunk, cheeks cut, clothes rotting on us. Captain's leg had a slice down the calf where a branch had taken him. My cheek was a line of pink that's a scar now. Davis looked whole until he talked, and then you heard the rattle. They gave us water and strong coffee and bread so soft, I cried eating it. I didn't think I could cry after the jungle. I was wrong. Davis muttered in his sleep on the ride back. Eye in the trees, he said over and over. It sees at night. It waits in day. He'd wake and look at the canopy even when we were under a roof. His hand would drift to where the radio would be and then hang there. We got to Bel Em and the hospital was white tile and echo. They gave us shots and wrote our temperatures every hour. A man from the command came in with a blank notebook and a soft tie. He smelled like soap. He took our statements one by one. The captain's was short. He said, severe losses, unknown animal attack. Mission failed. He put the words down without throat clearing. He didn't say sloth. He didn't say monster. He said unknown, like a fence to keep something inside. They nodded like men nod when they think you're being professional. They classified the report. I saw the stamp. Big black letters. They filed it where things go to be forgotten by daylight and remembered at night. The map board back in camp got a red line drawn through that patch of green with a word, unsuitable. That's Army for don't touch. Sometimes that's the bravest thing we do. Weeks after we made it back, a riverman brought in a little notebook they'd found snagged in a root clump downstream. Bleeze. The cover was scratched and swollen from wet and then dry and then wet again. The pencil had run where the pages got soaked and then dried out and then got wet again. But some sketches were held. The claw marks, the footprint with the toes wide and the heel deep. The stride measured in little take notes in the margin. He'd started to write a paragraph about a survivor lineage. He'd compared jaw shape to ground sloth fossils he'd seen in a museum and to a sketch in a German book. The sentence ended mid-word. The line went jagged and then stopped. Maybe the page tore. Maybe the hand did. I kept that notebook for a while. It felt like holding on to proof that we hadn't all gone soft in the head. Then I gave it to the captain because it wasn't mine. He put it in a canvas pouch and said he'd send it to a museum someday. Maybe he did. Maybe it sits in a drawer with a label that says, Field Notes, Amazon, 1943. Maybe someone will open it, smell the rot trapped in the paper, and close it fast. We burned our clothes. They told us it was for bugs. It was for memory. I still smell the jungle when the weather turns. Wet fur under a tarp of green. Sometimes the night gets too quiet on my street and I lie awake and count my breaths and hate myself for it. We never found Parker's Cross again. The river eats, the vines grow. The ground takes back what you lay on it. The clearing where we threw grenades, with the burnt trunks and the fire scars, people say the jungle regrows fast. That's true. Vines came over that ground like a blanket, quick. Trees sent up shoots from stumps like they were mad we cut them. If you walked there today, you'd see green and hear frogs and think about how pretty the light is. You wouldn't see the line where Rizzo fell. You wouldn't see the arc where Lee reached for a thought and got a claw instead. You'd step and feel the ground give a little because of the ash underneath, and you'd tell yourself it's just topsoil. There was a rain the day before we left Brazil for good. One of those slow ones that doesn't make a scene. It pooled in footprints by the dock. I looked down and saw one larger than the others, not a boot. Toes, wide, heel deep. It had filled with water. A little breeze came off the river and wrinkled the surface, just once. Then it smoothed out. The boat horn blew and I stepped over it like a man steps over a grave he doesn't want to acknowledge. You want a moral. I know how stories work. I don't have one. We went into a place that wasn't ours because the war said rubber and airstrips. We met a thing that had been there longer than any of us will ever be alive. We left less than we went in. The jungle doesn't care if your boots are new or your orders are stamped. It watches. It waits. It takes. Some men call it myth. Some give it a name they can say without spitting. Mapinguari, the boatman said. The watcher. The one that follows. I don't care what you call it. I sit by a fire sometimes. Someone will ask about the war. They want big battles, tanks on roads, planes overhead. I tell them about a river instead, about a breath in the trees, about a milky eye that saw more than it should. I tell them straight, no polish. This is me doing that now. Believe it or don't. I don't lose sleep either way. I lost my sleep in 1943. The jungle kept it. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.